I'm Karen Pittman, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
Ronnie is high on the floor. She's literally, you were like, oh, I'm nervous. Like, she's excited that you're here. And then she took those CBD drops. She took a little vial in her water and she says, boop, good night. I jinxed it. She stood up.
She hears you talking about how she doesn't appreciate it. Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From.
With Damien and Anne.
It's me, Damien. Here, we're in my home.
It's me, Anne. I'm in Damien's home. We are... You know, Damien has this beautiful intern. Actually, we're just celebrating her 1-year anniversary with Damien. So it's been a year, and she is the best intern that money can't buy. And I love her so much. I hope that you go take a look at her face on Instagram because she is the sweetest, and she has one ear that stands up straight.
It always is infected. Folks, if this is the first time you're listening to us, this is our show where we, longtime collaborators and pop culture savants and best friends.
I was about to say, that sounded very formal.
Yeah, so we are best friends who do a podcast where we talk about all of the things we're really into, the things that we're critiquing and we're not into, and then we follow it all up with a great interview with a character actors in between.
Okay, so the news just broke today, and I just wanted to make sure, because we haven't discussed it, that one Miss Betty Gilpin will be playing Anna Nicole Smith in a movie about the last days of her life.
I didn't know.
You got tagged in it multiple times, and people texted you about it, I think.
Not me.
Oh, okay. I thought you saw it. But yes, Betty Gilpin will be playing Anna Nicole Smith. Can you check and see if it's a movie or a limited series? The point is, we are huge Betty Gilpin fans, and if you think we haven't tried to get Betty Gilpin for this show, you're wrong. We've been trying her since day one of Glow, season 1, episode 1. She's an incredible actor, and I think people that know, but she hasn't gotten her star shine just yet. So I think this is going to be the breakout, truly, for her.
I was just looking her up, and I just didn't see it, and it's such a surprise to me.
I love her so much. I think she's going to be incredible. I don't know that I would have seen her as Anna Nicole Smith, but now I can only see that.
I'm into it.
We're huge Anna Nicole Smith fans here. The Anna Nicole Smith show was very important to me. You know, I always loved purple-haired Kimmy. I don't know why I wanted to call her cousin Kimmy, but I think she's just Kimmy. And then there's Howard Stern, not the shock jock, but Howard Stern, who was her lawyer / best friend / maybe in love with her / maybe.
Did he have the kid with her with baby Danny? Was his?
Is that, I don't.
Or was is alleged and then it
I think because she was married. She had that photographer husband. Remember, he had hair like Keith Urban.
That's who ended up being the
father of Daniel.
That was but there was wasn't it? It was
that was the second kid's father.
Anna Nicole and Howard Stern were raising the kid together, and then she died, and that guy did a paternity test, and it turned out
wait, really?
I believe so. Folks, it's alleged.
I think this is what Howard Stern wanted all along. I mean, the whole thing, that reality show was probably extremely painful and exploitative in many ways, but I have to say I watched every single episode. It was really fascinating. So I can't wait to see what Betty Gilpin does. I think she's going to be incredible.
I'm obsessed with that, and she was on my mind, and you'll find out why a little bit later on. Folks, I think we just need to get right to it. As you know, if you saw the name of this episode, our guest this week is the great Karen Pittman, who is currently starring on not one, but 2 high-profile wild rides of shows, which would be, of course, And Just Like That, and The Morning Show. And, and Just Like That, the finale just aired. We, Anne and I, and our college friends watched it together because we all a bunch of us started watching it together when we moved to New York. And getting to talk to Karen right before going into the finale, I mean, geez. Do you have any thoughts you want to share about the finale here?
It feels so long ago. I've consumed so much more Sex and the City content since I watched the finale on Thursday night, including the documentary. But I have to say that what I didn't know and what I would have asked Karen Pittman about had we see in the documentary is the fact that Cynthia Nixon says in that documentary that the script had originally set her up to have a relationship with her professor. And which by the way, the show completely builds towards that. Like the first 4 episodes of And Just Like That, you're thinking like, this is where this is going, right? Except we introduced Che earlier. But I feel like they laid the groundwork for that, but then it just doesn't happen. But Cynthia Nixon said, what if we have her fall for this Butch character who is non-binary, and Che Diaz, the podcast host, carries like, and I thought, I'm into Cynthia Nixon pushing for like Butch representation on the show and like a love story with a Butch person. I just think there was so much happening with that relationship. It was so all over the place, but I loved that little tidbit. And I would have asked Karen Pittman if she knew that and like,
Same.
How that worked in terms of the progress of the filming of the episode. So that was something that we didn't have in our pocket, but it makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I mean, my only other thought, and I, I'm a broken record here. I was posting on my Instagram stories. If you're following me, you would have seen that I was asking people, like, did they think they would tee up Samantha for some sort of comeback for season 2? And a lot of people, most voted and said, like, the ship has sailed. And I was like, I think she's going to drop Big's ashes in Paris, and then maybe she'll take a Eurostar to London. And I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I think some folks have speculated, myself included, that that's what would happen. And of course, that is what happened. But prior to it, we were all gathered around the TV getting ready to watch it. And I was like, guess what? I brought poppers in the event that there's any mention of Samantha. She hasn't been mentioned in the last several episodes, so if there's no mention, we won't take them out. And then she was mentioned with a text message, and they came out of my pocket, and they got passed around, and they were slowly moving. And
they hit me last.
I was crying because, but it was like not the way I wanted it to hit. And then our friend Brenna said, "Wait, y'all did poppers?" Like everybody else had them, but
we were already halfway through the next scene when my poppers hit, so I just stayed silent as my ears like lit up with fire. Yeah, it is. We are a broken record here. We love Kim Cattrall, and we also loved the series. As we get into with Karen Pittman, there is a lot of discussion around the show. Like, was I ultimately glad to see them back? Yes. Would I have been also glad to see Kim Cattrall there? Absolutely.
Just like Diane Wiest, Candy Bergen, and Meryl Streep begged of us, it let us all talk. I think we should get into it without further ado.
I agree, but let me just preface it with this one thing. We had a couple of sound issues, so bear with us. Give us some grace. You know that we're doing the best we can here on Zoom. And for you morning show heads out there, Karen discusses with us some spoilers for season 2. So if you haven't watched it yet, you haven't gotten to the end, maybe fast forward through that section and just go right to the next beat, which is, of course, And Just Like That.
You might know her from And Just Like That,
The Morning Show,
Luke Cage,
Yellowstone,
The Americans,
Homeland,
and Disgraced on Broadway.
Wow, today is a huge day. Can't believe that we are here with actor Karen Pittman. Thank you so much for joining us on You Might Know Her From.
It's a pleasure.
Karen, we have so much to get into because right now you're, of course, on 2 super high-profile shows, And Just Like That and The Morning Show, of course. But we were thrilled to sort of discover that you're, of course, a theater actor at heart and have been working in the New York stage for years. So for our listeners, some of your stage credits include Disgraced, Good People, and Passing Strange on Broadway, both Pipeline and Domesticated at Lincoln Center Theater, and King Liz at Second Stage. Obviously, there's a lot more on that list, but your film and TV career is sort of popping right now, but is theater still in your bones? And are there any dream roles that are sort of ruminating in your mind now that you sort of are having a moment?
Yeah, I theater is definitely in my bones. It'll always be in my bones. I actually went to NYU grad acting, and one of my mentors there was Zelda Chandler, who, if you don't know her, she probably could be referred to as one of the primary architects of regional theater in the United States. At Arena Stage, she developed many playwrights and producers and actors there. And I had the great benefit of her tutelage while she headed NYU grad acting. And one of the things that she said to me was that theater is that mountaintop experience, which you'll always want to go back to. You just learn so much, not just because you have an audience there, but you continue to be your own teacher in the experience of acting. And so I'll always go back to theater. It really is just such hard work, but it's gratifying work when you get it right. And it expands your idea of what a story can be and what a character can be. And so, yeah, I'll definitely be going back to theater. There aren't any roles that I think of. I mean, I just saw Macbeth. Have you guys seen Macbeth?
I haven't seen it yet. Okay, how was it?
Not going to tell you too much except extraordinary. Obviously, okay. I worked with Frances McDormand years and years ago as a cover on a David Lindsay-Abaire play called Good People. And I just think she's extraordinary. And so I watch a lot of what she does. But I will just say that Denzel Washington does a great performance. And I never thought of Lady Macbeth as one of the roles that I wanted to do. And after having seen Macbeth, I think to myself, the role that I'm most interested in is Macbeth, actually.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah. Get into that.
We're going to get into it.
Get into that public theater. Get into that Oscar Eustis. Get into that. Karen Pittman as Macbeth. You could do it. We could do it.
We're manifesting it. Karen, you've recurred on a bunch of high-profile TV series, and we noticed a trend in some of your TV work where you often play these high-status women. For example, you're an NYPD inspector on Luke Cage, a cutthroat real estate CEO on Yellowstone with Kevin Costner, you're Paul Rudd's boss in Live With Yourself, and an FBI agent on Homeland. Is there a part of you that has to pump yourself up when you're playing these high-status roles, when you're going toe-to-toe in a scene with, like, Alfred Woodard on Luke Cage, for example?
Oh, do I have to pump myself up? Well, it depends upon the person I'm working with and my level of nerves. Alfred, certainly, in the beginning, I had some nerves with her. But what you come to find out with the best actors is that they're just hoping to fall into the character in the same way that you are. I don't have that level of nerves anymore, but experientially, you do try to feel like, oh, what's my line? And, oh, I'm supposed to stand here. And, oh, good. Let me just make sure I hit my mark. All of the camera technique that you have, like, it sort of has to come into play, like, pretty quickly. So I find that I need to be more focused.
Okay, we have a hole in our theory, though, which is that you also played a defense industry employee struggling with alcoholism in The Americans opposite Kerry Russell. Spoiler alert, Kerry Russell hits you across the head with a whiskey bottle and then presumably kills you with the shards. So the very important question is, was that sugar glass and did it hurt?
Listen to me. Listen, first of all, I come back in season 4 of The Americans, and I literally just thought I wasn't going to come back after season 3 or I can't remember which season. Anyway, they called me, Joel and Joe, showrunners of that show, executive producer of that show, called to tell me, Karen, we're going to kill your character off. We're so sorry. I was like, no, I'm so excited. How is she going to die?
Yeah.
In her kitchen with a vodka bottle. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for that moment. And they're like, stunt woman is going to do it.
No.
That is the story of my life. I mean, I also did a guest star on what was the show? Blind Spot.
NBC's Blind Spot. That fight scene is incredible. We were like, okay, we're just going to go right there. We're going to go right there because you brought it up. Okay.
Thank you. And I was just like, I'm going to get it. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to get all this fight choreography. And they brought in a stunt person who was great. I mean, she got thrown through the plate glass, window, museum thing, which I desperately wanted to be thrown through, and landed on a mattress. But at any rate, yeah, listen, I don't get the benefit of the great stunts that my characters go through most of the time. And I don't know. I mean, I got to say, I don't necessarily need to be in those moments, but I certainly want to be. I wanted to be hit over the head with that vodka bottle. I wanted to be thrown through that plate glass window. Like, I wanted to do all of it, but I just couldn't. So
we were doing research and we found out that in Disgraced, you were credited as the fight captain. So we feel like you have stunt training that like puts you in a place where you should be doing these stunts. I mean, look, if you don't want to do it, get the stunt person, and like maybe they don't want to do the insurance that it requires to get you to do that. But like, why were you the stunt coordinator?
Why were
you
the fight
captain? What the hell?
It feels like it should be the stunt coordinator. I was not. That is a higher level of choreography and skill that I simply don't have. But what I will say is that basically, okay, for all the people who don't know, when you are in the theater and there is a fight scene of sorts. They practice that scene every night before those actors go on stage, because fight scenes are choreography. And so as the fight captain, I just simply watch the actors go through the motions of the choreography every night. I would give them little notes. Oh, that didn't look so believable. Do you know, maybe you should actually try a little, follow through on that punch a little bit more. Can you move your, that kind of shit was the thing that I would, and mostly they end up hating the fight captain because we were always a little bit, on our stuff in ways that we're probably not supposed to be. But listen, yes, I was a fight captain. Yes, I do like a little choreography, stunt coordinating, stuff. And maybe there's an opening for me. Everyone keeps saying, what do you want to do besides acting? You want to go into singing? And I probably should go into stunt coordination now that we're talking about it, very obviously.
Second career.
Okay,
Karen, we just have to dive in because the morning show is one of the starriest things to ever exist on a streaming platform and launched Apple TV Plus.
And it's in my life. It's very starry. You're right.
It's wild. So for any of you Luddites who are not paying attention, your character, Mia Jordan, produces the show within the show and has a bunch of juicy scenes with Steve Carell, Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon. You've said on the record that you auditioned via Skype for the show, pre-Zoom. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But did they shroud the co-stars and the plot in secrecy? And also, how did you celebrate when you did land the role?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of publicity around the show starting up. But when I got the script, I was just like, this is some hella good writing, which is something I'm always interested in. And real talk is that in my theater career, I worked with writers like Ayad Akhtar and David Lindsay-Abaire and Bruce Norris and Dominique Morisseau. And, having gone to grad school, you understand what the basis of plot, good storytelling, and great characters, what that looks like. When you get into the industry, your experience is going through a ton of scripts and seeing what that looks like. And also, having been an understudy, you start to see what the technical mechanisms are in creating a really moving and entertaining and what those stories look like that really have a profound effect on the audiences. And so when I got the morning show script, just a few scenes I was like, oh no, this is the shit. And then I heard that Jen and Reese were doing it. And I was like, oh, that'll be fun. I could do something with them if I got this. Then I did the audition. Then I heard Steve Carell was doing it. I had a second audition, and then I heard Billy Crudup had signed up for it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be big. And so when people were like, were you excited about working with Reese or were you excited about working with Jen? I was most excited in real terms, and probably because of my history as an actor. In real terms, I want to tell a great story. I don't want to just be a big character in not so great story, a lead, character in a not so great. I want to be involved in an ensemble that is about the business of entertaining, informing, enlightening. And I thought that the morning show was going to do all of that even before I knew Mindy Kaling and Marsha Gay Harden and all of those folks are in it. Once I got involved with it and I understood the background of the people that were in it, Academy Award and Emmy Award and Golden Globe Award winning people, I was like, oh, this might be an extraordinary step in my career. And I do think any moment where you're like, oh, this is it, I've made it. It really never is that. It's just great, more work. Do you know what I mean? It's just you're just going to have to work harder. So there wasn't really a moment where I celebrated it because I literally had to get on the plane and go to LA like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after it was done and we had our premiere, I did buy myself a gift.
Can you disclose what that gift was?
It was a house.
Ooh! Congratulations. Well done.
Incredible.
It's a small house.
Whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Not a mansion.
House is a house. A house is a house.
A chair is not a chair.
A chair isn't a chair.
Yeah, and like you said, work begets work, and this is so high profile.
Super high profile. I mean, after that, I did do Homeland. Flew to Africa right after finishing filming the first season of the morning show. Went to Morocco. Never been to Africa. It was great. And then after that, I ended up in Utah a few months later doing Yellowstone with Taylor Sheridan and Kelly Riley. And then, of course, the morning show came out, and then the pandemic hit. Like, we got nominated for Golden Globes and such and so forth, and it was great. And then, then the pandemic happened, and we didn't shoot for another 8-9 months. We came back at the end of 2020 and shot it for season 2.
Mm. So we actually talked to former guest of the show, Adina Porter, who played Jennifer Aniston's manager on season 1 in a few episodes, about like the sort of tone that the show navigates, which is sometimes like deadly serious, always politically topical, sometimes darkly comedic, and then peppered with a few musical numbers. So like, to be honest, talking about like the cast, when they announced it, I was like, this is a rom-com, right? Like, I didn't understand sort of what the gravity of the show was going to be based on when they announced it. So how did you, when you got all of the scripts, when they started coming in, how did you navigate sort of riding the wave of that tone of the show?
Right. Well, I mean, I feel it's so funny because I feel like the show had all of that in the beginning, and it all made sense because as actors in that ensemble, everyone brings a certain level of gravitas and humor and romantic sort of sexiness to all of their characters. I mean, so I think what the morning show ended up being season 1 was just our very best attempt as creatives to tell a very original story and to do something no one had seen before. And I think that season 2 came along, and I feel like we were fighting so hard with the pandemic of it all, just to really get in there and tell a daring, kind of a bold story, that the challenge was just trying to figure out how to make all of that make sense. And so I think the tone shifted starkly in season 2, I think because of the pandemic. But in season 1, I loved it. Like, I love the in and out. Is Mia a little bit scared of Alex Levy? Yes, she kind of is. But she's, really excited about Bradley, and I'm going to go get it. And, I loved all of that. As an actor, I live in the behavior of the character. So for me, tone is all in how people walk and how they type and how they look and what you see them looking at in the scene. That kind of stuff to me, I think, is more reflective of human behavior. And I think all of that was reflective of how I interpreted the tone for the character and the world. And it got much darker in season 2.
Yeah, definitely.
The series explores corporate media's reckoning with the Me Too movement. And we think that Mia has some of the most complex stuff to play because she's sympathetic to Mitch's plight because they had a relationship, but she also struggles with her own complicitness within that situation.
Agree.
Did you have conversations with the writers about Mia's choices? Because it feels like the show is concerned with Mitch's redemption and presenting the perils of cancel culture. And I would have to assume that that might be tough to play as the woman in that relationship with him.
What I had the benefit of was that I felt like the directors and many of the producers didn't actually know a lot of my work unless you had seen me on stage and theater. So genuinely what I brought to the character, as far as the emotional depth of that character, the seriousness, the gravitas, the focus and tenacity of her work ethic, like all of that, I brought into the character. And I think they were very pleasantly surprised to see that the character had a depth. I don't think they understood the connection of Mia and Mitch until I brought in how affected she was by the loss of that relationship and how hard she had to scrap to get back in with Bradley Jackson. She's very committed to that. And I think through season 1, through a certain level of commitment to her emotional life, you start to navigate, this woman really cares. She gives a damn, She's not another sort of strong, noble Black woman, doing the thing and grabbing the bull by. She actually is a woman who has some deep vulnerability, some deeper emotional life that we see as the audience, but nobody at the morning show or UBA actually sees what's going on inside of her. So when it came to the whole question of whether or not Nia really cared about Mitch or thought he should get it or F him, I did feel that what was important to demonstrate in Nia was a great empathy for this man that she had a relationship with, as opposed to being one of the many women who were like, he was, not a good guy and a predator and what have you. So when it did come time for him to be canceled, I think that Nya saw that as collateral damage, or in general, something he had to be accountable to for, the mistakes that he made. And as a person who worked at the morning show and wanted to see herself rise in the ranks, I think she felt like, oh, well, sorry, not sorry. Do you know what I mean?
This is just.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, but part of that is my experience with men, Damien, is like, I have dated a lot of men who have made, oh God, I'm about to talk about personal. In my life, I've dated a lot of men who have had deeply fatal flaws. And when those flaws befell them, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, oh God, I hate that happened to him. He is a good guy, but he's got to learn this lesson. So I think that that's part of how Nya looks at this whole thing of him being canceled. She only reaches out to him one more time after their relationship has ended. And that was when she heard that he died in episode 8, season 2 of Confirmations. And I did at some point ask the showrunner earlier in the season, would she ever reach out to Mitch for all the stuff that she's dealing with and how to handle it? I think they had a relationship where he was very much of a zaddy. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was the guy who saw her, respected her.
Ooh, yeah,
they had a mutual admiration for each other. And in another time and place, they might have had a real relationship that could have gone a little bit longer, or maybe even gone the distance. But that she reaches out to him to say, hey, are you out there? If you are, email me back or text me back. And then we never see if she actually sends that message to him, because she gets pulled away to the phone to hear that he actually has died. Anyway, just a lot of wonderful, fascinating, emotional stories to tell. But some of it I just picked up on as an actor. Some of the writers and producers decided, hey, we're going to go with this. And then the rest of it was just me sort of.
Yeah. Your internal life is, I think, a gift to the show. Like, they are better for it because of your internal life.
Yeah. And I think there are some aspects of my life that aren't better for my heightened imagination. Like, I think my kids would love for me not to be so, in my imagination and my work, but they certainly are gifted with that. Like, they earned it themselves. Like, they have their own imaginative life. I mean, many times in my life, it saved me, not just in my career. It helps me build characters, but it's helped.
You have this great scene in season 1, which I like to call like the Dicks Beware speech.
Yes.
Did you perform that like in front of the whole set of the, were you performing that for the crew of the show? And what was the reaction in the room? Like, how did you prepare? What was that day like?
Yeah. So I shot that episode with Roxanne Dawson, who you guys might know was on Star Trek, I don't know which Star Trek she was on, but she was on Star Trek. I think she got that little prosthetic on her face. Badass. Anyway, she's also a director, and she comes from a theater background. And so she was very much like, Karen, we're going to shoot this scene. I want you to be here, la, 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 so on and so forth. And then she gave me the parameters of it. And, I tore into this moment for her. And there really was no other way to navigate this space for me but just to rip open the quilt, I'm saying the quilt. I'm thinking of a Lynn Nottage play, Intimate Apparel, but there's no other way to do it than to open the whole thing up and just be like, you guys, this is, bloody, are you not entertained? Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, had to be that moment. And I did break into that, and she was like, oh, okay. Then the camera has to do this and it has to do that. You do that. And Bela, you go here. And then, so suddenly that whole scene came to life. And there were people who came in. But the great part about the recurring actors and the background actors in the morning shows that these folks have been with this show for as long as the series regular people have been with the show. And so we are very much in this space of supporting each other and lifting each other up. When someone is doing something positive on screen, we're like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, keep going in that direction. And wow, that was really powerful, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was definitely one of those moments. I recorded that over and over and over and over again. Like, it was one of those things where they're like, this angle and that angle and that angle, and the camera's moving this way and you're moving that way. And, you know, it was very much one of those things where it was like, you know, focus, coffee, you know, cocaine. I'm just kidding. No cocaine involved, but it was definitely like focus, you know, be in there with the character and just sit in it. It was a very long day, but I love that moment for the character. And I love that it was written in the way that it was, you know. Dicks Beware moment. Maybe one of my most satisfying emotional catalytic moments for a character that I've ever had.
It's very satisfying.
It's really good.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
The morning show, as mentioned, has a surprising amount of musical numbers in it. Will Mia have a musical number in season 3? And if so, can you reveal here what it will be?
You know, we have a new showrunner, and she was talking to me about that. And there are a bunch of great new writers on the show. Obviously, you have a new showrunner, you have new writers and coming into the fold. And she was like, Karen, is there any way? I was like, are you kidding?
We're going to give you Rose's turn in season 3. I'm ready for it.
Can I be... Everything's coming up.
We're ready. We're ready.
I'm not singing. Mia doesn't sing. Karen sings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Mia
fair
does
enough.
not sing.
We can get Martin Short back on.
Oh my God. He was so good.
It was insane. I loved it.
I feel like there should be something musical that Mia does. So stay tuned.
Okay.
I'll come back on. We'll talk about it. We'll talk
Okay,
about it. We'll come back on and talk about it when season 3 comes out.
Okay,
beautiful.
love it. Okay, so we have to get into it. You're appearing on one of the buzziest shows on television right now. I'm not joking when I say anybody that I meet and see, any friend that I haven't seen in a long time, we spend like 40 minutes talking about it. Of course, you're on And Just Like That, the Sex and the City reboot, as Professor Nya Wallace. You're Miranda's law professor turned friend. And Nya is one of the few new characters we actually get to see in her own world outside of Carrie, Miranda, and Charlotte. Nya and her husband Andre get a sex scene, and we follow their struggles with IVF. So, first question, when you signed on for this project, how much of the series and Nya's personal story did you know?
I knew a lot.
Oh.
I didn't know the entire arc, but I mean, when I auditioned, all the names had been changed. But through a number of circumstances, I figured out, this is Miranda's.
Oh,
this is Miranda.
Okay.
This could be Miranda. I watched the show, so I knew what Carrie's voice sounded like.
Okay.
I knew what Samantha's voice sounded like, and I knew what, Charlotte's voice sounded like. At that point, I didn't know that Kim Cattrall wasn't going to be on it. I didn't know. None of that had gotten to me. So yeah, when I got it, I was like, oh, interesting. And genuinely, I knew every African-American actress I knew was auditioning for And Just Like That. Everyone wanted to do it. Everyone thought it was going to be, a big ticket item in their career. And I knew Michael Patrick King and John Melfi because they produced a pilot with Bridget Everett years ago. And I had a role on that pilot. And I thought, the pilot didn't end up moving forward, but I thought I'll have my chance to work with them. And when I auditioned, I auditioned with Michael Patrick King, and John Melfi was on the call too. It was another Zoom thing. But I didn't think I got it. I thought there's just everybody I know is auditioning. Let me just throw my hat in the ring in the case. And then I did get it. And almost immediately I heard from Cynthia, and she was like, so excited to have you on the show. Really hope that it works out for us all to do it. And it did. And they told me very early on that Nya was going to be going through IVF, and it was going to be challenging. I did a chemistry read with a couple of actors, and Leroy McClain ended up taking the part as Andre Rashad, which I was very happy about. Yeah, we had a sex scene. It was my first sex scene ever on camera.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
How
we
was
did it in the theater. Listen, let me tell you something about a sex scene, okay? Scary, okay?
Yeah.
But the other thing about it was that it was kind of the perfect playground, if you will. Cynthia Nixon directed that episode. And it was just really safe. Like, we had the intimacy coordinator there, and we had talked about areas that we could touch and areas we couldn't touch, and things we could do and things we wouldn't do. And do you know what I mean? And Leroy had already done 2 sex scenes. which I was like, really? He was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So it actually was fine. I mean, it actually ended up being really beautiful and lovely. You know, I was nervous I'm always nervous when I'm in a show where it's an ensemble and there are a lot of white characters that I'm going to be made into a token, that I'm going to be objectified. And, you know, we're going to talk every camera angle and every scene I do, we're going to talk about race and being Black and how hard it is to be a Black person. And, you know, I thought that the way that the show approached the conversations around racism and the systems that set it up in our society was actually on the white women to announce their ability to try to figure it out, not on the Black women or the women of color to help them figure it out, right? Yeah. And I thought that was cool. I actually thought that was really interesting versus I'm going to have to tell you what you need to correct. They literally walk around all the stuff and try to fix it before they bring it to you. Do you know what I mean? And that's different. You know, that's different. You know, people were very nervous about it. And maybe you guys can tell me why. I thought it was hella funny.
Nervous about...
Why were people nervous about it? I think because like the original show was so white, and I feel like the way that they dealt with like New York City was a fantasy, but it was an all white fantasy, and the few Black characters and the like Black and brown characters they had on the show were not treated with any dignity, I will say. And like I love the original show, but I think it's a fair critique of the show, having been obsessed with all 6 seasons. I
think there was a lot of fair criticism around the lack of diversity and inclusivity in the first iteration of Sex and the City. But I also did not, I mean, for the amount of fans who were like, this has got to change, I felt like a lot of the chatter after it did change was, why did you change it? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't change it like that. Do you know what I mean? So totally. I sort of felt like, no, what are we doing here, people? I think part of that, and I was talking to one of the OGs, we call them the OGs on the show, women who were there before us. One of their things is this show has always been groundbreaking. People have always criticized this show. We are just used to it. But as someone coming in who's as an actor, putting in your best effort, who ends up being the face of the story, you know, trying to dodge, you know, the knives and the bullets coming out at you can be really, it's like, why did I sign up for this again? This feels weird. But having said all that, it's such an incredible job. It's such an awesome opportunity to tell a story on a big platform in a big way that, you know, it really does make up for it. Some of the loudest voices are the voices you hear, but I do have the sense that there are many, many people out there that really have enjoyed the last 9 episodes of Just Like That and are looking forward to the season.
People are obsessed with it.
You're literally getting us through the New York winter. It is all that we're discussing.
I know, right? Like a fun, sexy way.
And I just have to say, to your point, I do think the show is like damned if they did and damned if they didn't. So if they decided to sort of keep it in the white fantasy that the original iteration had been in, there would have been criticism that they weren't in the current moment and they weren't living in the real world. And if they changed it, the people that were like, well, this isn't the tone of the old show, like, well, it's not the old show. It's a different thing. It's 45 minutes. It's not the TV show. It's not the movies. It's like we're taking those characters and putting them in a slightly different, like more realistic universe where they're forced to sort of like deal with reality in a way that I think is actually interesting, whether or not that's like age or race or gender and sort of what they're dealing with. So I'm into it. I think I'm sorry you face so much criticism because like whatever all of us have to say, we're also so invested.
Everyone's watching.
Yeah. I think that's part of it too. That was part of my experience with season 2 of The Morning Show. I mean, there was a good bit of criticism about that show, but I think it sort of thickened my skin for what Just Like That was going to end up doing, which was the fact that people are talking about it as much as it is means that they are watching it and they have a lot of strong feelings, which at the end of the day, I would much rather people have interesting conversations about a story that I'm telling than to just be like, oh, no, it's nice. I like it.
Right.
Congratulations.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, so the reboot, as we said, introduced several new characters via their relationships to the OG. So there's you, there's also Seema, played by Sarita Chowdhury, Lisa Todd Wexley, played by Nicole Ari Parker. So in the penultimate episode, we got to see the 6 women together when they all pitch in to paint a women's shelter. So, the finale has not aired as of recording of this interview.
Right.
But do you think the show is working towards more of this sixsome for season 2? We'd love to see Nya get to be in scenes with Seema and LTW solo.
Oh, I would love that too. I have not heard, fingers crossed that they were having a season 2. I'm dying to do a season 2. I think that all of what the writers and producers wanted to do in season 1, all of the incredible ideas that they had, I don't think they were able to fit all of them in season 1 as they wanted to, just because of the time constraints of actually just putting a show like this together. So I definitely think there's going to be expanded storylines for the new women that come in. At least I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they're able to do that. That you'll see a lot more of Lisa Todd Wexley. Hopefully you'll see more of what Nya does in the classroom and her life outside of, the classroom. Just all those things, which I thought they did a great job of, putting down good roots in season 1. And I think that is kind of what season 1 is about for all of the characters. Yeah, my fingers crossed, A, that we have a season 2, and B, that yes, Nya ends up crossing paths with LTW and Seema and Che Diaz.
Yeah.
But I do hope season 2 means that we are not going to be steering over the speed bumps and the left turns into conversations about, how different we are and race. And those conversations, I think, are super cumbersome, and they take up a lot of time in the development of a character. I've said this often. It's hard for me to create a character that's Black because I just am. Do you know what I mean? Like, it'll be hard for you to create a character that's white because you just are white. And on the day to day, as a Black person, or maybe even as a white person, you're not thinking about your skin color. You're just thinking about, let me get this hair together. Let me get this lip. Let me get cute. If you're thinking about what you look like, that is the story that is out front. And one of the things I talked to Michael Ellenberg about in the morning show was, he was like, we just choose the best actors that we thought were great for the part, regardless of color. Because the question for us going into season 2 of the morning show, he and I batted back and forth, like, do you want to talk about race every time Mia comes on screen? And I was like, no, because I don't think in general that is the majority of what people of color talk about anyway when they're leading their lives. They're just talking about, their life and what they want and their ambition. So the interesting part about it for me is I'm hoping that in season 2, we can just talk more about the humanity of these women of color and what it looks like to live in New York City in the 21st century, and upgrade the show as far as just the personalities of these women and the character traits, not just that make them different, but that bring them together in New York City, because New York City really is the most unique city in the world for the level of diversity and inclusivity that there is here.
Well, the good news is, as you said, they laid the groundwork. They laid the groundwork for season 1. So hopefully we can just move forward with season 2.
Yes. Listen, anything they want me to do, I'm going to be there because I love those folks. I had a great time. There's nothing better than going into that daggone costume department and being them like, Karen, we have 12 pairs of hot sneakers for you to choose from. And I'm just like, yes!
Okay, so Molly Rogers and Danny Santiago are the costume designers. Did they ever put you in any piece of clothing that made you say, no, I'm not going to wear that? Nya isn't going to wear that. Or she wouldn't wear that?
This is going to sound crazy. I handed all of that over to them. Okay. Like, I am one of those actors that's like, tell me what to say, tell me what to wear. Let me see if I can make your imagination my imagination. That's the fun shit for me.
Yeah.
So
what I wouldn't have worn by Karen Pittman. I will wear anything that Molly and Danny tell me to wear, basically. I walked into that place and there was like shoes, clothes, track suits, ideas, jewelry, things. Queen, what do you want to wear? What was interesting was in that sex scene, episode 6, I have a person who's really into lingerie. So there was all the lingerie available, obviously, because fantastic. And then, of course, you had to test out the lingerie to make sure it would do the thing. And of course, we ended up not wearing any of it at all. But you had to test out whether or not that lingerie was going to look sexy and good. So it was me in front of the mirror, sort of like, and they were just, Molly was like, I've never had a fitting like this. And I was like, me neither, but we've got to do it. It's the Sex and the City of it all, honey.
Exactly.
But it was fun. I mean, I got to tell you, they know what they're doing. They're pros. No reason to question them. If anything, they were begging for me to say more. So
one of the things that I love was the Chucky doll scene on the subway, because to me, it felt very true, like MTA vibes.
Yes.
So, Karen Pittman, what is the closest to a Chucky doll experience you've had on the New York City subway?
On the 14th Street Union Square subway, I was running to get that train. And you know how the grates move right up next to the, I slipped and fell. And like, I know, like I had one of those moments where like, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fall underneath the train. And that was as close that I've gotten to like true death experience in this way.
Did your legs go, like, did your feet go in the...
My feet actually stopped right at the train. Just stopped right. The train was like, whoosh, and my feet were like, boom. So that was death defying, other than the extraordinary amount of body odor you encounter in the summertime on the New York City subway, which of course also can be truly deadly. Climate change happening right there on the subway platform. But yeah, no, that was my big.
It's terrifying.
Terrifying.
So you've been a New York actor, for much of your career. And Sarita and Nicole R. Parker said that they came up together. Did you know them? Like, were you pals because you were all sort of NYC based?
No, Sarita and Nicole were in another lifetime from me. So I didn't see them at all. I think that they were running around New York City at a time that I was still sort of, trying to figure out my life and trying just in Northwestern, and like really I had just started at NYU as a grad actor. So they had a whole nother, they were doing things. They were very grown. I was still, trying to figure out, I'm born in Mississippi, raised in Nashville. And a lot of that informed so much of who I was for a very long time. Like I had a lot of blinders on. I was tone deaf to a lot of stuff as a young woman from Nashville. I had a lot of hang-ups about sex and, gay people and Black people and who we were supposed to be. And New York City and the community here really helped to open my eyes up in so many ways, which I think is part of the reason why I have so much compassion and empathy for people who are still trying to figure it out. Because it took me a long time. It took me a long time to figure out that what was just regular living for people wasn't taboo. There's nothing, weird or wrong about choosing to live out loud, live the life that you have always dreamt of. Like that's not actually going against the grain. So in many ways, they were much more sophisticated than I was when I came to New York.
Well, now you're on the gayest podcast there is in the biz, babe. Okay, so you mentioned that you watched the original iteration of Sex and the City. So these are just some housekeeping questions, and before we're getting close to wrapping up. Okay, so who of the original 4 did you most identify with when you watched it the first go round?
Yeah, I would say I didn't identify with any of them. Okay. And I've said before, the characters who are on the show now, those are the characters I identify with the most.
Fair enough. Yeah. Were you Team Aiden or Team Big?
Aiden, for sure. Aiden for sure.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He was boring to me, but I understand this is my pattern of
behavior. He's a hottie. And I always thought that Big was a little bit toxic.
Yes, for sure.
I'm with you.
Who would you rather as your gay bestie, Stanford or Anthony?
Ooh, Mario.
Yeah, Anthony's great. And do you think that Professor Nya would be friends with Samantha Jones? She's thinking.
Nya would be friends with Samantha Jones. I am thinking. I want to say yes.
I think she would be tickled by her.
I think she would be absolutely tickled. That's what I think. I think she would be tickled by her in the same way that she's tickled when Charlotte comes up and says, is this the Nya Wallace in episode 9? But I do think she thinks that Miranda is her, that's her bestie. That's her person.
Okay, Karen Pittman, we've reached the part of the show we like to call the rapid fire. It's rapid for us. You can take as much time as you need, but if you'd like to be rapid, feel free.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it. Let's go.
Okay, great. As we've mentioned, you're often cast as a woman in a position of power. In the TV space, this often translates to being cast as a lesbian. We are queer and always looking for queer roles for our guest, but it's something we haven't been able to find on your resume. What gives?
No, I haven't found a character yet that I think that has found fertile ground in me. Who or how a person loves is not something that I have had the opportunity to explore as an actor yet. Like, this is my first role as someone who is in love with someone, like deeply in love with somebody. Yeah. People often, if you are a woman who's ambitious, for some reason, they don't think that you have a sex life. So I haven't found a character yet that melds all of that stuff together. This is the first one in my entire 15-year career of being an actor. Not that I haven't auditioned for them. They just haven't cast me in it.
We're ready for your lesbian role whenever you're ready.
Me too. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm ready too.
You attended Northwestern for voice and opera. You also received your MFA from NYU in acting. Who is more annoying, opera students or acting students?
Acting students, by far. Students are focused on their work and then they take a break when they want to. But acting students are always looking for their next character. They do not know when to rest. Like, no, I don't want to hear your one-person show one more time. Like, take a break. You know?
In an interview for The Morning Show, you compared working with Frances McDormand and Laurie Metcalf on Broadway to working with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon on The Morning Show. Karen Pittman, 2 seasons in, do you stand by that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They have an extraordinary work ethic. They have an extraordinary work ethic. They're very smart. They're intelligent women. They've been in it for an extraordinary amount of time. Like, they're funny. They're exciting. Laurie Metcalf. Oh my God, Laurie Metcalf.
We're obsessed.
Yeah, can you talk about watching those 2 women work, the stage actresses?
It's so interesting. They're just like they're just go to work. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing flashy, exciting, or where's my tea? Give me my sunglasses. None of those women are like that. They're very just. Where's the work? Let me do it. How do we get into it? Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Great. Let's do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Especially Frances. She would come to the theater 2 hours beforehand and go through the entire script. She'd also find time to pick up my daughter. At the time, she was 3 or 4 years old. She'd pick her up and hang out with her in her dressing room and, show her lots of love and then, get ready for work. Like, she just could do it all. So
obsessed with that. You are an understudy for both Good People and Passing Strange on Broadway. What is the best and worst part of being an understudy?
Best part is actually hearing the show every night, and the worst part is hearing the show every night because you're not going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stick around anyway, just in case something befalls the show and you have to show up and do some work. So best part is hearing the wonderful response of the audience and cheering your friends on. But the worst part is also, I have to sit in the back again tonight.
Karen Pittman, last question. In Evil, you play a woman possessed by a demon and you speak in tongues, foam at the mouth, get chained to the bed, and bleed from your head. What did props put in your mouth to generate that foam, or was that all you?
First of all, it wasn't foam, it was oatmeal.
Nice. Okay, this is good intel.
Yeah, it was oatmeal. And I had to hold it in my...
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, it was that kind of a move.
Okay.
I had to put it in my mouth and I had to let it sit there and they'd be like, oh, just a second. We'll figure it out. We'll just have to, and action. I'll be like, it was like that move. It was fun. That was the most fun I had in a long time, guys.
Yeah, you had a full Exorcist moment.
Yeah, that possessed woman shit, that's some fun. That's some 8-year-old Karen shit. She loved it.
Karen Pittman, this has been a real hoot. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Oh my God, it's my best, most favorite time ever. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, Karen Pittman was a delight. And honestly, I feel like we had a really frank conversation about a lot of the things, because those are two shows that we have been talking about incessantly on this show. So thanks so much to her. She was a phenomenal guest, and also really just giving us what we love to hear, which is what comes out of your mouth when you're foaming or puking or dying, when there's blood coming out of your eyes. Oatmeal. Oatmeal is the foam when you have a demon inside your body. And these are the types of things that I like to know. So it's like, do you have to swish it around in your mouth and then like let it out a little bit?
It's probably under your tongue a little bit. I mean, I love thinking about things like this. I mean, we've asked more than one actor, like, what do you snort when it's like fake cocaine? And like people have been like,
Isn't it like in our heads, we're always like, it's vitamin D powder, right? Because that's what I read somewhere.
That's what I think Celia Keenan Bolger told us, that when she was in Bachelorette off Broadway, it was vitamin D. Is that right? Or vitamin like B12? It was some vitamin powder.
We need to know. For those of you that know, please let us know. Also, I'm just going to say this one last thing, which is, if you listen to the morning show portion of the show in which spoilers were revealed, let me just tell you, Damien had not finished the show. So when Karen revealed what she revealed, oh man, I saw Damien's face and I was just watching him, and then he starts laughing when she reveals what she reveals. And it was such a satisfying moment on the Zoom call, because I was like, I had tried to save that spoiler from Damien for about 6 months because I just didn't want him to know. I wanted him to experience it in real time. And then it was like, you know what? Thank you, Karen Pittman. You saved probably Damien a lot of time.
It was like that time that we both saw Andrea McCardle on 9th Avenue, and we also saw each other see her. So it was like we were looking at her, but then we also were looking at the other. It's like that. I was watching her reveal the spoiler, and then I saw you see me, and then I was laughing, and I was trying not to laugh during her answer,
right,
but I couldn't help but smile because I was like laughing at you seeing me. That's what it was like.
It was a great moment, and Karen Pittman was totally game. So many thanks to her. And also, if you haven't watched the documentary, please go watch it. It does show some interesting behind the scenes stuff that I think is relevant if you're a fan of the show. Also, if you like what we're doing here and you're down for us to keep doing more of it, the best thing you can do is leave a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. If you have already, thank you so much. We see you. We love you. If you haven't yet, like a name of an actress you'd like to hear, a name of an episode that you love, 5 stars, an emoji, any of that. And if you have some more commentary, please leave that there. If you have constructive criticism, send it in a DM. Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, you know what time of the show it is. This is the time where we connect this week's guest, Karen Pittman, to next week's guest in a sort of 6 degrees of actors that are women and non-binary performers to next week's guest in like a blind item. Does that make sense? Here we go.
Give it to me.
Karen Pittman was in Just Like That with former guest of this show, Sarita Chowdhury. Sarita Chowdhury was an evil eye with Sumita Mani. Sumita Mani was on Glow with Betty Gilpin. I didn't even know this thing about her playing Anna Nicole Smith, but she was in my brain today. Betty Gilpin was on Masters of Sex with Lizzie Kaplan. Lizzie Kaplan was in Mean Girls with Amanda Seyfried. Is that how we say it?
I think we learned it was Seyfried from Tina Majorino.
Amanda Seyfried. Amanda was on Big Love with, as mentioned, former guest of this show, Tina Majorino. Tina Majorino was on True Blood with Anna Paquin. Anna Paquin was in X2 with next week's guest.
Ooh, we have a superhero in our midst.
A superhero.
Superhero.
So there you go. Can you figure out who it is? I hope so. And we'll drop some clues on social media. If you want to follow us there, you can see my Sex and the City polls. You can see Anne's pictures of herself in a hospital gown. You can follow me at Damien Bellino and all of the things. And you can find my co-host and my best friend and the co-creator of this podcast, Anne Rodeman, on all things at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE.
Know Her From is produced by us, Damien Bellino and Anne Rodeman, us two people, and we're going to give a shout out to Ronette the Pit, who is doing great work falling asleep under my feet. Thank you so much, Ronnie. We also want to always thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That's Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. They keep us on track. They keep our wheels turning. We love them. They do incredible work, and all the editing that you hear on each and every episode is courtesy of Daniel Sears.
Special thanks to Gang. For all that music you hear underscoring each and every episode, you can download and stream Gang wherever you listen to your music.
And if you want to see that Dicks Beware speech from Karen Pittman, I've got it queued up to the very timestamp from her reel on our show notes. Click to the bottom of the episode. You will see all of the links. Everything that we mention in each and every episode is linked out there for your viewing, listening, auditory pleasure.
So and just like that documentary, something that you mentioned that I can't stop thinking about is Sarah Jessica Parker, like being like an EP.
Yeah.
And you were like, it was this interesting. I've never seen her in that sort of mode. And I think of her as being, I think of her as being similar to Carrie, even though, she's an actor, of course, and blah, 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 blah. And now I can't stop thinking about it because it was like her, like I feel like there's like lots of people who were probably saw that and were like really into her being like, do we have a belt that okay, great. This is hideous, but perfect. We need it. And I feel like lots of people probably watched it and were like, she's an innovator. She's an EP. She's a creator. And I was like, wow. And it's like, I didn't think about it. So like, it was like in my brain, but when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, I totally was like, she's a lot more, I think, like ambitious and like
a businesswoman
in a way that I don't necessarily...
Right, because I still have this view of her that I want to hold on to, which is her as the third Annie on Broadway, like sitting in her underpants, getting interviewed. I'll link that out in the show notes. And being sort of like a sweet, poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks who, like, mom took them to the ballet and they, like, had free lunch and struggled to get everywhere that she was and was sort of a scrappy, cool kid. And now she's, like, a CEO boss who has, like, a book imprint and a shoe line that she added. Like, she uses her shoes on the show and she cross-promotes all of that. She also has a wine. And I'm like, I miss SJP as third Annie, and that's like the part of Carrie that I like to hold on to, not like CEO, quote unquote girl boss, which is deeply not my brand. I still love the show. I still love her. Bring back Kim Cattrall.